Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, there is one story I'm going to cover that's Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies, but I think my channel, my other channel, comes back. I can post videos tomorrow on it. So I'm going to save most of the stuff people have been sending me till tomorrow for my Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies. But there is one front page article from Huffington Post, which I'll get to at the end of this video, that's blaming all you guys, all you anti-vaxxers, for hijacking people's traumatic stories for your personal agenda because you're bad people. Huffington Post said it. It's their front page story today. And so we'll get to that at the end of the video. But other than that, I'm going to return to my normal format now, posting my Hollywood celebrities dropping like flies on my other channel, and then the rest of this stuff here at my regular Box of the Future channel. Now, on both channels, I've been making short videos, which I enjoy doing, and it's easy to do because you do it right on the phone. I can do it right on my phone from a video I've already posted. And as far as I can tell, there's no way to upload a short video directly from my computer or whatever it is, right? And so, I don't like tall videos. When I watch videos, I like to turn my phone to the side. When I watch videos on a phone, everybody shoots their videos from their phone in a long form, but I like the widescreen, and I'm a widescreen person, and of course it translates better to TV and computer screens. But so many people watch tall videos on their phones. These short videos have become popular, and YouTube's really pushing them. It helps me with the channel, and it provides extra income. Because what YouTube has learned to do is that ads that run between short videos, they have ad sharing for those videos. And I'm not sure how that works, but it's different than running ads on the individual short videos. And so there's various ways this is helping my channel. But because you only get basically a third of the widescreen, and you can move it around to where you want there's a way to adjust it. So you can move it to the right or the left or keep it in the center. So you guys might have noticed with the Don Lemon video with Fetterman, you don't see Don Lemon. And you don't see Fetterman. It's just one half of his face and then one other half of his face. Because I was limited by the the size of the screen. But what I can do, and I've done it a couple times, is take a video and upload it, and then move everything to the center. And so then when I make the short video, everything's lined up. So there'll be times I put out videos, and they have to be made public, but they're meant to be a short video. I did this with the video entitled Clap On, Clap Off the Clapper. And so if you see a video like that, it's meant to be a short video. I'm going to post it and make it public until I make the short video, and then I'm going to make it private, and then the short video will come out. So just so people know. It's not really much effort on my part. It takes, maybe 5-10 minutes tops to make one of the videos. So it's a way to, and some of the short videos, I have a lot of bits and gags that do well for the short videos. And if you can think of them, if you're watching a video and you think that something's worth a short video, you can just, tell me at what time it is in the video. And, sometimes people quote me back to myself, but I don't even know what they're talking about because I forgot about what I've said, right? But if you think something's worth a short video, and it doesn't even have to be funny, it can be something more profound, you can let me know, and then I can just, once I am aware of it, I can clip it and put it up there because it doesn't hurt. Even if it sucks, it's not going to suck, but it's, some things are better than others, but it doesn't hurt to put it up there, right? It doesn't really cost me anything, and it's just, 5-10 minutes of my time. There's things that I say that people, that are quotable things or bumper sticker things or funny things, that are, one-liners or whatever it is. And some of them could be spiritual, some of them could be jokes or whatever. And then my older videos, I'm going to go back. I'm going to try to grab all the Britney dance ones because I think those are funny, and some of the other ones, and put them in the short format. And the Britney dance are, because she posts those in tall format, they do well because it even fits better in a short video than it does on a widescreen. So anyways, that's the short video stuff. So let's get into the other news here. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Bunch of stuff to get to, other stuff to get to here, and then the big story about from Huffington Post. Some more Grammy news. Harry Styles is a white man in trouble. He's another white man that's found himself in trouble for being white and clueless. And so CNN has worst ratings week in 9 years. CNN record is the lowest week since 2014, according to The Wrap. Attributing the news ratings to the Nielsen service, The Wrap said CNN averaging 440,000 viewers in prime time, 93 in the key demographic news for the week of January. Its average of 400,000 in viewers and 80,000 in the imported demographic for the daily total. Again, citing Nielsen numbers, The Wrap said that the new CNN show CNN This Morning with Don Lemons also recorded its lowest week since it started 3 months ago. It averaged just 300,000 viewers. See, these shows should get 1 million viewers at least per show. Certainly the primetime shows. But they don't because CNN is done. They went with the all-Trump model, where they were just all about Trump. And, Trump has jumped the shark. People aren't interested in Trump. There's less Trumpers, and there's certainly less Trump haters. And there's other problems going on in the world. And so CNN and MSNBC going full, let's rely on people's hatred of Trump. Well, that worked. They were in there. That was their, that was their big moment with the Trump hate for the past 5 years. And now that that's over with, they don't have a second act, right? Because they're, basically unwatchable. And their audience is dying out. Their audience is dropping like flies because it's older people. I'm editing, so I want to emphasize this point here, right? So the key demographic, whatever that is, 18 to 44 or whatever it is, right? So when they say the key demographic, they're talking about younger people. So that means most of the other people watching it are from 44 till death, right? Like it's not younger people. It's not people. It's not like people under the age of 18, and so the majority of their audience is 44 and older, and the majority of that audience is older people, 60s, 70s. People who are used to getting their news from these types of old school media. The younger people just aren't doing it, right? And so they've already lost this battle. No matter what they do, their business model has failed. Young people aren't going to come to them, right? I mean, think about having only 88,000 people. I mean, even 1 million people is only a fraction of the population in America, which is like 330 million people, right? I mean, it's not even like 1% of the population. It's less than 1%. It's like, 1/3 of a percent, right? And so most of the people aren't getting their news from CNN or any of these mainstream media sources. It's 2-3% of the people, whatever it is, right, total watching mainstream news. Everybody else is getting their information from somewhere else, or they're getting no information. Like they don't know anything that's going on. Like that's the reality. But their business model is done, right? I mean, you can get enough viewers to sustain maybe some networks can do this. CNN probably can't. I mean, I would say it's unsustainable. But still, your influence is non-existent, right? People aren't watching your news shows. I mean, the majority of them. The majority of people are no longer getting their news. I mean, the overwhelming majority, and especially young people, from this style of format. And so, they better come up with a second act because otherwise they'll lose that ability for people to know what's going on, right? People can just make up what's going on or get it from the internet. And, unless they find a way, because they have to control the messaging, unless they find a way to deal with this, and they're trying desperately. You'll see this at the end of the video when I talk about how they're trying to blame the anti-vaxxers again. But it just doesn't work because nobody's listening to them, right? They don't have an audience. Then there's this. Soviet submarine launched all its missiles in an unprecedented rehearsal for Armageddon. This is a site called the War Zone. So I don't know, sounds like they're into war. I don't know what they do. With the Soviet Empire only months away from collapse, its Navy conducted an unprecedented test of its submarine launched doomsday weapons. So, this is an article about in the final years of the Cold War. So, this is going back to when the Soviet Union collapsed. The Soviet Navy tasked two of its Delta class powered ballistic missile submarines, or SSBNs, to verify their capability to launch a full salvo of 16 ballistic missiles at once. This was Operation Behemoth, and the results were, it has to be say, mixed. The first attempt in 1989 ended in disaster when propellant and oxidizer leaked from one of the missiles and ignited in the launch tube. The result explosion destroyed the missile. The second test, however, carried out in 1991 by the Delta-class submarine, was successful. For the first time ever in naval history, a full ballistic missile salvo launch was made from a submerged submarine. And so this might come back into play sometime soon, coming to a theater near you. So I want to add this. I'm in the editing portion of the video. So them testing that shows that it was on their minds to go full nuclear, right? When the Soviet Union, the government was collapsing, that they were this close to going fully nuclear. Like they were at least saying, all right, let's, make sure these submarines work, right? In case we decide to fire nuclear weapons at the U.S. And to my understanding, and this is part of the teachings of the, Saj Marg meditation that I do, that nuclear war has been avoided and delayed a couple of times, right? And so it's inevitable. It's a part of our human history, but it's been pushed back. And, so there you go. Chinese balloon flew over Florida when Trump was president, CNN. A Pentagon report says a Chinese balloon hovered over a location Trump knows all too well when he was in charge, the news network reported. And so they're saying it hovered over Mar-a-Lago. So now they're trying to make this thing better by saying, oh, they've been getting away with this for years. Right? U.S. military failed to detect prior balloon threats, top defense officials say. Again, I don't believe any of these things because, they've lied so much about China. China claims second suspected spy balloon over Latin America was also lost. They keep on losing their balloons. Downed Chinese balloon was 200 feet tall, U.S. military says. So it's quite big. Biden's balloon BS insults Americans' intelligence, endangers us all. Is there anything Team Biden won't drag ex-President Donald Trump into as a butt-covering maneuver? In this case, again, this is the New York Post that turned on Trump and called it some guy from Florida, right, is running for president. I mean, they did this to Trump. Humpty Trumpty, right? They did this to him, and then, the stuff they said about when he ran for president, and they're over him. Even with that, right? In this case, the embarrassment was Chinese spy balloon fiasco, and the butt covering was the leak from a defense official that balloons from Beijing entered U.S. airspace at least 3 times in the Trump years. So they didn't, use that during the election or bring this up, except that Trump and the pack of top ex-Trump officials then all insisted they've never been briefed on such incursions, and word came out that the incidents were undetected until the president left office. Well, how did you detect that balloons entered our airspace? This is an act of war. Spy balloons entering our airspace, right? Especially after the big event 2001. America is very guarded about our airspace. And they're saying they detected the balloons 4 years after they came here. Oh, they were there. We just never knew it, right? And so our defense geniuses missed multiple earlier violations completely at the time. And on this round, they spotted the craft at some point, but Team Biden opted to keep it from the American public until regular citizens spotted it. So that's all, That's all. It's a fiasco, right? Because, World War III, it's coming. Like, it's just around the corner. Harry Styles slammed for clueless remarks during his Album of the Year Grammy speech. One journalist calls Styles' comment the most white privileges thing to ever to be uttered at an award show ever for all time. I mean, white privilege is it's just got to go, right? And so I think he was given the award for that horrible movie he did and some of the other things he's done. But it says here the remark rubs some viewers the wrong way, considering he was up against the likes of Puerto Rican born Bad Bunny and Beyonce. Beyonce, whose respective wins would have signified the first Spanish language album to win the award or the first black woman to win the award since 1999. Well, she's not the first. It's just been a while. Harry Styles, well, this is what he said.
This doesn't happen to people like me very often, and this is so nice. Thank you very, very much.
What do you mean, people like you? Boy band members? Like, I mean, what did he mean, people like him? British? Did he mean white guys? Because they're all saying it's white guys, right? And so there's outrage in the social media world, especially since Beyonce hasn't won Album of the Year yet, I think, right? And so they're very upset. They're very upset at Harry Styles and his white privilege and him saying it doesn't happen to people like him. And they take that as, a white guy, right? I think Harry meant something else. What kind of person are you, Harry? Right? Tell us about what kind of person you think you are and why people like you usually don't win Grammys and Albums of the Year. Delta passengers say flight attendant told wife she has a stupid face. I don't know if they have it here.
Because I will turn this plane back if I get you off. Don't press my button. Don't. You got the wrong one today.
Well, I have you on video.
You got the wrong one.
Saying my wife has a stupid face, so
you're being rude.
A disgruntled Delta passenger tweeted a tense exchange with a flight attendant from November. The out-of-control flight attendant verbally assaulted, threatened us, and had us wrongly removed from our flight back in November. The confrontation began after the couple reportedly placed their items in the first-class bins because those in their section was full. You can't have economy peasants leaving their belongings up in first class. How Amber Rose talks to son Sebastian 9 about fans-only stripping. How do you talk to your son about being a stripper? What do you say to your son about you stripping on the internet? Your son, by the time he's 5, is going to start Googling you and seeing everything. Well, maybe not. Like 5? That's not, You know that one of Sebastian's classmates recently told him about her work on Fans Only, where celebrities and influencers post not suitable for work photos and videos for a subscription fee. I had a whole conversation with him about it. I said, whoever told you that their parents are ignorant because they're obviously got it from his parents. Okay. And then she said, when it comes to women, you have to let women do what they need to do to support their families. Hey, those hockey tickets don't come free, buddy. Mommy's got to do some internet stripping. You like your new bicycle? You like your PlayStation 4? Well, hey, mommy's got to take her clothes off on the internet. You got to let me do what I got to do. Chris Brown apologizes to Robert Glasper, blames Academy for Grammy loss. Congratulations, my brother. I would like to apologize if you took offense to my reaction at the Grammys, you said. Came off as really rude when you said, who is this guy that just beat me? And you mocked him. After doing my research, I actually think you're amazing. The organization isn't doing us blacks our due diligence, and you and I should never be in the same category. Totally different vibes and genres. Okay. So that's, and then he says, congratulations, hope you are able to feed your family for life. God bless you, G. Okay, well, it's the Grammys' fault. Maria Shriver recalls sobbing at the convent after Arnold Schwarzenegger split.
I went to a convent. The mother there said to me at the very end, she said, and I actually have written about this, but I haven't shared it, but she said, I think you came here looking for permission.
Boom. She went to a convent and she started to sob after she found out Arnold was banging one of the maids.
Screw your freedom.
And so it was all downhill from there. Jennifer Lopez insists that she had best time with Ben Affleck after miserable pics. Ben Affleck is known for sad Affleck, and that's how he's always going to be portrayed. They're going to find pictures where he looks bummed, and he's because he's either taking naps or he's looking miserable, and now that's what he's known for. He just has to live with it. Pink Floyd feud spills out into public as Roger Waters and David Gilmour go at it. The two former bandmates fire off at new attacks on social media. Gilmour's wife, novelist and lyricist Polly Sampson, fired off a tweet accusing Waters of being anti-Semitic to the rotten core and called him a Putin apologist after lying, thieving, hypocritical texts, avoiding lip-syncing, misogynistic, sick with envy, megalomaniac. Because he has been somebody who has talked about the atrocities happening to the Palestinian people, right? And so he's one of the few celebrities, and I see it on Facebook, people post this, that talks about all the various, things going on. And it says here, it's not clearly what specifically prompted the message, but it may have been an interview Waters did with Germany's Berliner Zeitung newspaper, in which he said he stood by his comments comparing modern-day Israel to Nazi Germany for its treatment of the Palestinians, accused the Israelis of genocide, and defended his boycott of the nation. Waters, who quit Pink Floyd nearly 40 years ago, also wrote on his website that the Israeli lobby is trying to silence him via a despicable smear campaign, while he insisted he is not anti-Semitic. He also posted another message in response to Sampson, calling her comments incendiary, and wildly inaccurate. And so that's happening. But again, he's one of the few people that's called out Israel for its treatment of the Palestinian people. So this was the front page article. Anti-vax conspiracy theorists are stealing these people's stories. You guys need to knock this off. It's horrible of you. And here's the article. It features this young woman here who's very sad. She looks very sad. They got a picture of her looking sad. And it starts off here. There's a new thing here going on, which I'll discuss. I got a comment about this. There's a new push now to stop this, what's going on with, let's just read this here. Claire Bridges has survived, but just barely. She flatlined 3 times. Her legs were gone below the knee. The surge of drugs pumping through her system, combined with the shock of her circumstances, had resulted in a bout of psychosis in the hospital. Months later, she would still sometimes have to remind herself, this is real, I'm here. So she had some sort of mental breakdown from the drugs and other things. Bridges had survived COVID-19. She contracted the disease in January 2022, and a congenital heart condition called aortic valve stenosis had exacerbated the virus effect on her body. Tingles in her extremities quickly turned into critical lack of blood flow. Surgery, life support, and dialysis followed. Rhamnodomyolysis, something, can't pronounce it, damaged muscle tissues, poisoning Bridges' blood. necessitated amputation. She left the hospital last March and quickly learned that by doing so, she'd be admitted into a growing club of people whose tragedies and medical emergencies have been turned into anti-vaccine propaganda. The people are anti-vaxxers are at it again. They're just so evil. Why are they so evil, anti-vaxxers? I know that some of you guys are like this. Why are you guys so evil? Thanks to a conspiracy theory hawking film and a condescending social media movement and a corresponding social media movement, the condescension's from the article. That's where I picked up on the condescension and I made that error. Thanks to a conspiracy theory hawking film and a corresponding social media movement, anyone who had, as the saying goes, died suddenly, in air quotes, or in Bridges' case, escaped a sudden death, regardless of the cause, was a target. Now, they're being targeted. This girl's being targeted. Now, as their ranks swell and their frustration mounts at seeing lies about themselves and about their loved ones, some are speaking out, refusing to stay silent as their experiences are hijacked. Bridges' fight for truth began when the first article about her discharge from Tampa Bay General, the New York Post wrote about Bridges' experience, and a summary of the article appeared on the paper's Instagram post, noting that she was a young model who, despite being fully vaccinated, had suffered serious symptoms from the virus. One day prior, the Daily Mirror, a British tabloid, had referred to her as a double-jabbed, aspiring model. There was blood in the water, and people began writing comments that cast doubt on the media narrative, despite or because of one commenter snarked, "Clot shot," said another. Despite or because of, one commenter snarked, "Clot shot," said another, referring to blood clots supposedly resulting from being vaccinated. And another, "I'm so glad this thread is full of people who know that Rona ain't had nothing to do with that poor kid's amputation." I had at least 5 or 10 people text me and say, "Don't look at those comments," Bridges recalled to Huffington Post. Before she had a chance to tell the world about what happened to her, she was yet another cautionary tale for millions of people around the world. Don't trust the vaccine, they say. Did you see what had happened to that model in Florida? Okay, so continuing from where I left off, I just went for a walk with my wife, and here we go. Backhanded sympathy. So this is the new title of this section of the article. Bridges calls it backhanded sympathy. People spamming her social media accounts with comments like, "You poor thing, Fauci did this to you." Others tell her she's brainwashed, or she's got what she deserved for getting vaccinated. At first, she was baffled by the effort to steal her story for anti-vaccine propaganda, but the mischaracterization of her experience got worse, and she got angry. So I'm going to comment on this in a moment. I'm just going to get through the article here. A lot of things to comment on. And, all of it. But let's just get through it here. On Twitter, anti-vaccine accounts omitted Bridges' heart condition and focused on her vaccination status. Oh, they left out data? Right? They left out data. At least one compared a photo Bridges took in the hospital to an illustration of the occult deity Baphomet, referring to the vaccine as a death cult. The popular anti-vaccine blogger James Santolo, misspelling Bridges' name, commented, "Vaccine was supposed to prevent severe disease. However, Claire had both legs amputated, myocarditis, and kidney failure anyway." When I saw this, the girl said, when I saw this tweet, that was the first time I felt true rage. The first time, not after, well, we'll get into that. That someone was telling my story, they didn't even ask permission, they weren't even telling it correctly, and they were using it to push a personal agenda. You're forgetting the fact that I'm a human. She did interview with Snopes to try to correct the record. And so then it says, the worst perpetrator, though, died suddenly, a conspiracy theory film produced by the far-right internet presence Stu Peters, who had previously made a video in which someone speculated that the vaccine contained snake venom based on the belief that the COVID vaccine is a global population-controlled device created by the elites to intentionally harm recipients. The hashtag died suddenly is now regularly affixed to the nearly any medical emergency in the news, from the collapse of football player Damar Hamlin to the death of soccer journalist Grant Wall, regardless of the information is known about the incident, regardless of what information is known about the incident. A year after Bridges' hospitalization, the Died Suddenly Twitter account told its version of her story. Bridges was a 20-year-old model who had received the RMA vaccine, the account tweeted, adding 2 syringe emoji. Bridges is actually 20. Claire ended up having legs amputated due to blood clots and now suffers from myocarditis and kidney failure. Hashtag died suddenly. According to Twitter statistics, the tweet has viewed nearly 2 million times as of Monday, just 3 weeks after it was posted. For Bridges, the false narrative stings. It's frustrating to have this story stolen from you. You know, it's so much worse than having your legs amputated, right? I mean, this is, the issue here. And I'll get into it because some of what she's saying is legitimate. Some of this stuff, would be bothersome, which, I can understand. Whatever her, story is, whatever this is going on here. But it's not as bad as getting your legs amputated and having a psychosis from the drugs that are given. The influence of Peters and Died Suddenly, his social media movement and film, cannot be underestimated, particularly given the timing of Died Suddenly. The film made its debut on Died Suddenly, the Twitter account, on November 21st last year, days before the site's new owner, Elon Musk, said he ended Twitter's COVID-19 misinformation policy. And so it goes on from there. Okay, so here's the part that I'm going to say. I'm going to validate some legitimacy why someone would be mad at this. Because when I got really sick with COVID, and I've had it 3 times, and people told me, no, it's just a cold, or it's just the flu, or I was a shill and I was making it up. That's annoying. And there's things about the truth community that suck, where people make things annoying, and they lie on purpose to make their point. But this happens all over the internet, not just in the truth community. The mainstream media does it, politicians, certainly corporations do it. I mean, people just ignore the truth to push an agenda. And that happens, and that's why humanity sucks. It's a condemnation of all of humanity. It's a big problem in the truth community because it's supposed to be about truth, and people ignore the truth in order to make a point. And I've said this about all these people who have died suddenly and have been vaccinated. We can't prove it's the vaccine. So you can say you know, but you don't know, right? You can say that you're sure this is what happened, but we don't know. We don't know if this is what happened with this young lady, right? We don't know if that's what happened. So it's annoying, and I can see why people are upset at that, right? But her rage, her anger, and this thing that they're saying here, I mean, in the beginning, this is what's happened to her. This was, the hijacking of her story is not worse than, and no one would think it's worse than, the fact that she had flatlined 3 times. Her legs were gone because below the knee. The surge of drugs pumping through her system, these are pharmaceutical drugs, combined with the shock of her circumstances, had resulted in a bout of psychosis in the hospital. Months later, she would still sometimes have to remind herself, this is real, I'm here. Now, something caught this, right? Bridges has survived COVID-19. She contracted the disease in January 2022 and had a congenital heart condition. And then it was exacerbated, they're saying, by COVID and, lack of blood flow and all these other things, right? And so they're blaming COVID. And, of course, they're not going to blame the vaccine. I mean, they're not going to do that. We know that. So they're financially incentivized. Doctors and the pharmaceutical companies will financially incentivize not blaming the vaccine. They're not going to do the research, and they're not going to say it was the vaccine. But first of all, the vaccine didn't work for her. And there was false promises made by Joe Biden and the administration, and promises from Trump and Fauci and all these other people. And we now know that to be false, that there was no chance of it. They didn't believe the vaccine would prevent infection. So if you got the vaccine, you had the same likelihood of getting COVID as someone who didn't get the vaccine. And so you still had the same ability to transmit it as well. And as far as we know, it didn't really lessen the symptoms, right? And in her case, it didn't. Okay, so she had the vaccine and it didn't protect her from nearly dying. She flatlined, so she had, cardiac arrest, whatever it was. Lost both legs. And because of pharmaceutical drugs and the shock of what COVID did to her, she also went crazy. She had a psychotic breakdown. And so has suffered a severe event, right? And none of that was the fault of the anti-vaxxers. Like, that's got to be the worst thing in her life. She doesn't have legs anymore. She had this traumatic event. And so doctors told her it wasn't the vaccine, but we don't know if that's true or not because they've lied about other things. They're not trustworthy. They misdiagnose all the time, and they're actually looking into, slowly, but the CDC and the FDA and Pfizer and all these other, pharmaceutical companies are now looking into these more severe long-term side effects. And they said that there would be long-term side effects that, they wouldn't be able to tell through clinical trials. What sucks about the truth community is, people come in and they say they know when you don't know. And if you're going and talking to this woman or tweeting to her, and I don't know if that happened or not, but if you harassed her, like, you're a piece of crap. Like, what good are you? You're no different than Pfizer or mainstream media people. Like, that's just wrong. You don't harass people who have been traumatized and tell them it was the vax if, you don't know for sure, and you don't know for sure, right? We might think it is. We might, there might be lots of evidence supporting this, but we don't know for sure. And so, and it's her situation, right? And she suffered whatever she suffered. But we now know for her situation, the vaccine didn't protect her. And as it said, if the doctors are right and COVID did cause her to lose her legs and have this, situation, then what about where COVID came from? I have dealing with the after effects of COVID, right? My heart seems to have gotten better, whatever it is, right? Maybe there's no long-term effects, but I've gotten it 3 years. Each time it's less, it's not as bad as before, but it takes a toll on my physical system. And I think they released a biological weapon on purpose. And so again, I don't want to be angry and spiteful and bitter, because of my spiritual training and all these things, because other people are pieces of crap. Like, I don't want to be, I don't want to wreck my life and condition. But, I would, if I thought about it, yeah, they wronged me and they wronged all of us by releasing this biological weapon for whatever reason. If it's depopulation, there's a case for that, whatever reason. The people who are responsible for COVID and the pharmaceutical companies that made these vaccines that didn't protect her, those are the people you should be most mad at. And for making false claims, which Jojo Magoo did, saying that you wouldn't get COVID, and maybe she would have conducted herself differently. Whatever it is. Like, we don't know because it's all, it's all a bunch of lies, right? They said things that weren't true, made promises they couldn't keep, and they didn't ever get to the bottom of how COVID came to be in the first place, right? They never pursued the cause of this, and that's what caused her to lose her legs and have this horrible event happen to her, right? It isn't the anti-vaxxers didn't do anything to her. And so, yeah, maybe they've exaggerated and, harassed her a little bit, and that sucks. Like, that would upset me too. And that, I know that truthers do that. I know there's just a lot of pieces of crap here in the truth community that do that. And so, yeah, that sucks, but isn't as bad as the other thing, right? And so what they've done here is they love a victim. Mainstream media and politicians and, everyone, truth community people, they're all trying to hijack this girl's victimization, right? Huffington Post is doing the same thing. They're hijacking her victimization, saying it's the anti-vaxxers, again, who are the problem. And, there's lots of evidence out there that suggests that things are going south and the vaccine is a factor in a lot of people's poor health. Like, they've gotten the vaccine and then their heart stops. They've gotten the vaccine and then they get blood clots, right? And maybe the vaccine didn't cause it, but it's a reoccurring element. It's a part of the equation. It's a factor in the equation, right? And so they all want victim consciousness, right? And now the pharmaceutical companies, we know that Pfizer is going to make less money than they did before, and they have a lot of influence over the media and the government, these big pharma companies, and they're taking a beating. And so this is a way to fight back, is to demonize the anti-vax movement once again when they haven't delivered. Their drugs didn't deliver, in terms of what was promised. And people who got the drugs are suffering. And maybe it's not related, but, it kind of looks like it is, right? And so someone wrote a long comment saying that I was disingenuous. This happened, I think, right after I read this article. I started to read through the comments. And this person was an obvious like pharmaceutical shill. And they were saying the research they did showed that there's been no uptick in heart-related diseases. It's just that we're focusing in on things that happen all the time. Young children's hearts having cardiac arrest, athletes having cardiac arrest. It happens all the time. People are dropping like flies all the time, and there's nothing new to it. And the statistics this person looked at could prove it, and I was being disingenuous by, cultivating this, idea that there was somehow related to the vaccine. And it was such a shill comment. You could tell it was written by paid shills, right? This is an internet response team. And the comment is the kind of comment that really didn't apply to my video. And so I'm sure the same comment appears on many other videos and things as just a way to dispute all this, in a disinformation type of a way. And so this is what they do. We know it. We've seen it before, right? This is what they do. This is how they, deal with these types of things, is they find a villain. In this case, it's the anti-vax movement. And I've said this before to people in the truth community: have some integrity, have some sensitivity, and just, maybe not sensitivity, because I don't, I mock these things, but don't make false claims and don't push false narratives, without proof, and make it clear that you're not sure, you can't prove it, because that makes all the difference, right? When you come out and you announce reality without any proof, that's where they keep on getting you. And there's going to be disinformation agents in the truth community doing that already. And so don't add to it, right? Recognize the difference between fact and speculation, because it's obvious what they're trying to do here is they're trying to spin the narrative that there are people out there that are dropping like flies, that are dying, that have died suddenly, whatever it is, right? And, it looks related to the vaccine, but they're the ones who are going to have to do the science, right? They're the ones who are going to have to investigate themselves, and they're not going to do that. And so what they want to do is make the anti-vax community the problem again, right? The problem is people are having cardiac arrest, and words aren't as bad as that. See, this is a big movement they have, that somehow words are worse than cardiac arrest, or words are worse than actions, words are worse than assault, or whatever it might be. That by posting something on the internet is much worse than doing, horrible things to people, right? That result in pain and suffering and all these things. Yeah, it hurts people's feelings, and it's frustrating. But if you had a choice between cardiac arrest or somebody saying something to you that wasn't true about your own story, which we all experience on the internet, you choose the latter. You're not going to choose cardiac arrest or have your legs amputated, right? The real villains here are, potentially the people who released COVID or whatever happened with COVID, and the people who did gain of function or whatever it is that caused COVID. They're the number one villains. And the number two villains, perhaps, are the vaccine companies and the pharmaceutical companies that are now responsible for side effects. I mean, they could easily be the number one villain when the death count from, vax-related injuries is that worse than COVID. If that happens, and, that could very well could happen, right? But those would be the real villains, not anti-vaxxers. It's just, I've showed you the way they've demonized anti-vaxxers, and I got here. I'll just play the montage here, the whole one. I got a very long one. You don't have to watch it if you've seen it before, but it has all of it in there. How they demonize conspiracy theories and the anti-vaxxers, how they've changed their stories, all of it. Like, this is my long ass compilation.
It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask. It's science, and you shut up and wear your mask.
You shouldn't cut anti-vax people out of your life. They could be dead tomorrow. Spend time with them. Call them. Get in the will.
Screw your freedom.
The latest data that confirms that we're still in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Continue to be among the unvaccinated, are among the unvaccinated, are unvaccinated. The unvaccinated, there are people who are dying and who will die who didn't have to. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, do it now. Do it now. It could save your life and it could save the lives of those you love. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you, the people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. My message to unvaccinated Americans is this. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. As I speak to you, millions of Americans are still unvaccinated and unprotected. And because of that, their communities are at risk, their friends are at risk, the people that they care about are at risk. But if you're unvaccinated, you're not. And you're putting yourself, more importantly, maybe from your perspective, your family and your friends at risk. Ultimately, those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
You are not allowed to infect anybody just because you think you've got rights that are delusional, of course. This delusional, evil idea, you got to identify those people and bring them out into the open so you know who they are. If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
At this point, staying unvaccinated is like wearing a Yankees hat to a Red Sox game. You're probably going to end up in the hospital, and it's your own damn fault.
I was so worked up over the weekend about this fucking Aaron Rodgers of the NFL. I don't even know where to begin with that story. I mean, this fucking guy, I don't watch football. Sorry, I'm not a big fan. I know the guy's a real good football player. That's why they put up with his bullshit. If I ran the NFL,
he's going to be a Hall.
You came across as a national embarrassment.
He's talking to Aaron Rodgers. You came across as a national embarrassment.
There is no other way around it. It was the most embarrassing performance of Aaron Rodgers' career.
Jeopardy and possibly putting your teammates in jeopardy, to me, is selfish.
I'd give Aaron Rodgers some advice. It would have been nice if he'd have just come to the Naval Academy and learned how to be honest.
Southern California, where as of yesterday, we started giving the vaccine to kids aged 5 and up. Finally, our kids will be able to go to... Let's see.
Woo! Woo! Oh.
I'm not vaccinated.
Oh, where are you going? I take horse pills.
Yeah, we have to wait for them to be vaccinated because they are selfishly a endangerment to other people, including staff people here. So while we're all hopeful, and I join the president in being hopeful that we can reach a place where it is safe for people to be. What is this, the honor system? The honor system as to whether somebody has been vaccinated? Do you want them breathing in your face on the strength of their honor? So let's just see. Let's just see. I mean, again, this is about science and governance. And science and governance, we have a responsibility to make sure that the House of the Representatives chamber is not a petri dish because of the selfishness of some not to be vaccinated.
Teach people common sense. You need to get she doesn't even know what else to do to get the people of her state to get smart and listen to the facts and get vaccinated so people don't die. It's like that simple. Is it not the people who choose to remain unvaccinated right now who are causing all of this?
It is selfish at this point to not get vaccinated.
If you can be vaccinated and you refuse to, that's a selfish act. You're putting other people's lives and health at risk. You should get vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
The new cases in COVID are because of unvaccinated folks. But it's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks. It's the unvaccinated folks that are letting us down.
The people who are not getting vaccines, who are believing the lies on the internet instead of science, it's time to start shaming them. What else? Or leave them behind. Because they are keeping the majority of Americans behind.
I think I just passed a house with a Halloween yard decoration that was a bunch of skeletons burning an anti-vaxxer at the stake. I'm gonna go.
And so there it is. It says anti-vaxxer right here. Took me a while to see this. That's why I'm pointing it out. And it's got a bunch of skeletons sitting around a campfire roasting a skeleton anti-vaxxer. This is supposed to be a fire, which is pretty effed up. Like, it's really effed up, right? And what my wife pointed out was, what did these guys die from?
Not that Halloween is a contest, but they want it.
It's the platforms like Facebook.
They're killing people. I mean, it really, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
What he's saying there is that posting words on social media is killing people. And they've made this like the worst thing. That you're a bad person for posting things that aren't verified by the official story. This is a guy who droned children. He ordered the deaths of children in Afghanistan when he ordered a drone strike on an imaginary enemy to distract from a failed war and a disastrous withdrawal. And so there are horrible things being done all the time. But now they've made posting things on social media one of the worst ones. But it ended up not being true, right? He demonized anti-vaxxers and people who were posting things on the internet, and ended up being him who was the liar and the person that was putting people in jeopardy.
Effects or reactions would be most common from these vaccines?
Well, generally, the most common reaction is what you see with most any other vaccine. A sore arm, a little bit aches, you might feel a little bit fatigued and down for 24 hours to 36 hours at the most. A small percentage of the people might get a fever that would last for 24 hours. You take a Tylenol, you can take care of that without much problem. The safety of severe adverse events is really very good. In the 30,000 people in the Moderna trial and the 44,000 people in the Pfizer trial, the one we're talking about today, there were really no severe adverse events.
They didn't list any side effects. I mean, that's, a sore arm or, these things. I mean, he's talking about just how you feel after you get the vaccine, not 2 months out or 3 years out or 5 years out. But now we know that there are multiple side effects, which I'll get into after we go through these things here. We know that there is admitted to side effects, things that they're investigating, and things that are related to people dying. And one of the ways we know that they were being deceptive and not saying what some of the side effects were, because they never showed you commercials that came from the pharmaceutical companies themselves. It was social influencers or media personalities or Jojo Magoo. It wasn't Pfizer posting commercials, because if they did that, they would have had to list all the side effects, which we still don't know what those are, right, in terms of what they discovered. And it's still being studied, right? It's not even like they're fully, it's fully been vetted by even the pharmaceutical companies themselves. So this was all lies, right? Again, they lied to people and said that this thing was safe and safer than getting COVID. And, this turned out to be not true, right?
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
About it's to prevent severe disease, which we don't have data for that for kids. But I guess to me, the risk benefit calculation looks like this. If the vaccines are safe and the side effects are things like fatigue and headache and muscle soreness at the injection site, I would much rather deal with that for a day or not at all. I mean, most people actually have no side effects. And so I would much rather deal with side effects like that, but understanding that we're giving something that is safe and that can prevent the possibility of something horrible from happening, which is every parent's worst nightmare.
The question asked by the presenter was that because children really weren't dying from COVID, why give them a vax and risk any sort of side effects and things from the vax? And she, of course, said that there was no real side effects from the vax, which we now know is completely false, right? And we know that kids, there's something like 1,500 kids or less than that was the official statistics on the CDC died from COVID. Many of them had severe health issues going into the disease, right? So what she said here is, that she's saying, well, your worst nightmare is your kid's going to die. Again, putting the fear out there. There is a positive association with the word safe. Advertisers and presenters use the word safe to get people to buy their products. Safety is a big thing with people. And when they're scared of something like they were of COVID, and they were offered something that would keep them and their family safe, and they withheld information or out lied or, just made false claims with no scientific basis, and saying this would keep you safe, then people went and got the vax. And now we know that things are different. And so all these lies and deceptions, and she had the nerve to say the unvaccinated can't be trusted, right? And so the other piece to this, which we now know, and both Bill Gates, I have the memes here, I've saved these things, and Fauci have both admitted that COVID wasn't beaten by the vaccine. The idea that the vaccine would give herd immunity and COVID would disappear because everyone would be vaccinated and they wouldn't get COVID because they had the vaccine, and then, it would just disappear because no one would have it and they couldn't pass it on to other people. This idea of herd immunity through vaccination. We now know that COVID mutated itself out of existence, or mutated itself into a more safer, more contagious form, and that everyone had ended up getting it anyway. So the vaccine turned out to be relatively unnecessary based in what these guys are saying here.
In beating COVID-19?
Well, sadly, the virus itself, particularly the variant called Omicron, is a type of vaccine. That is, it creates both B-cell and T-cell immunity, and it's done a better job of getting out to the world population than we have with vaccines.
I think what one referred to, what was not anticipated, was the extent of the mutations and the amino acid substitutions in Omicron, which is really unprecedented. It kind of came out of nowhere, where you have a virus that has 50 mutations, 30 of which are in the spike protein and 10 or 12 of which are in the receptor binding domain. The thing that's important is that it appears to be able to evade some of the immune protection of things like monoclonal antibodies, convalescent plasma, and the antibodies that are induced by vaccines. That's the sobering news against severe disease. But when you get to Omicron, the protection significantly goes down.
Keeping the events that are safe and also the events that have fun for people too. We can't be canceling everything, especially if we're going to be living with COVID for the foreseeable future. I would say that if you choose to go, make sure that you're vaccinated and boosted. Make sure that you're wearing a mask, even though it's outdoors. If there are lots of people packed around you, wearing a 3-ply surgical mask. Don't wear a cloth mask. Cloth masks are little more than facial decorations. There's no place for them in light of Omicron. And so wear a high-quality mask, at least a 3-ply surgical mask. And if you're going to be visiting elderly relatives.
Recently, when you said here on CNN that cloth masks were, quote, little more than facial decorations. So, in light of Omicron, what kind of mask should we all be wearing? And were you surprised by the pushback from your comments?
Well, I was surprised because this is not the first time that I or Professor Osterholm or really any of us public health experts have been saying that cloth masks are not appropriate for this pandemic. It's not appropriate for Omicron. It was not appropriate for Delta, Alpha, or any of the previous variants either, because we're dealing with something that's airborne. We're dealing with a virus that's extremely contagious. At the very beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know about masking. And then we didn't have enough masks, enough high quality masks for healthcare workers. And so we were trying to ration those. But then pretty quickly, we recognized that COVID is airborne.
Do you agree with the move?
I do. There was and is a time and place for pandemic restrictions, but when they were put in, it was always with the understanding that they would be removed as soon as we can. And in this case, circumstances have changed. Case counts are declining. Also, the science has changed, but rather that the responsibility should shift from a government mandate imposed from the state or the local district of the school. Rather, it should shift to an individual responsibility by the family, who can still decide that their child can wear a mask if needed.
Take New Jersey, the case in New Jersey, for instance, their new case average is just over 4,000. Is that an acceptable number to do this, or are they projecting out to March 7th at this point?
I don't think we should be looking at case counts at all at this point, especially when we're dealing with a milder variant and when so many people were exposed to Omicron and therefore have at least some level of protection either through vaccination or immunity. The key number that we should be looking at is hospitalizations. If our ICUs and hospitals in that particular region are not overwhelmed, if they're not over capacity, we can set a number, for example, 75% or 80% full, then we should be able to relax all restrictions. And I actually believe that we should be starting to, with the first restriction removed, should actually be the restriction on children. Because while for adults, you could say, well, what's the harm of adults masking when they go into a grocery store? There actually is a harm that we should be discussing of children continuing to mask. That doesn't mean that masking doesn't have its place for children when there are very high rates of hospitalization. If we get a new variant in the future that children are particularly susceptible to, we may want to bring masks back. But we should also be intellectually honest and say that masking has had a cost, especially for the youngest learners, people with English as a second language, children with learning disabilities. There has been a cost to them. So the risk-benefit calculation has really changed.
But she's had the flu for 14 days. Should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And
so if she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. If she really has the flu,
she should not get it again.
No, she doesn't need it, because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
The current vaccines are not infection blocking. They're not broad, so when new variants come up, you lose protection. And they have very short duration, particularly in the people who matter, which are old people.
I knew these vaccines were not going to protect against infection, and I think we overplayed the vaccines, and it made people then worry that it's not going to protect against severe disease and hospitalization. It will, but let's be very clear. 50% of the people who died from the Omicron surge were older, vaccinated.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? And I really want a straight answer, yes or no, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunisation before it's entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
Okay, so let's just clear this up. The President of the United States has been confirmed by Pfizer, Dr. Deborah Brooks, and Reality lied to us that the vaccine would prevent people from getting it. You would be less likely to get COVID, far less likely. He said something like 98%, right? Less likely to be hospitalized, less likely to have severe versions of it, and less likely to die. And all of those things, these false promises, they were lies. They weren't true. And this idea that you would be less likely to transmit it to other people. And so the whole reason they demonized anti-vaxxers, I mean, this was, ongoing, all these things you just saw. But the reason they demonized anti-vaxxers was because there were people who were immunocompromised who the vaccine wouldn't work for. And, that's what their story was. And so it was your responsibility to get the vax so you didn't get COVID, so you didn't spread it, and you didn't give it to somebody else who couldn't benefit from the vax, right? That's the story. And that turned out not to be true because you had the same likelihood of getting COVID with or without the vax. So that's, there was no reason to demonize the anti-vax. There's no reason to make it mandatory. And as we now know, what Bill Gates admitted to and so many other people, that COVID mutated itself out of existence and people just got over it. People were over it. And so, even though people are still dying from whatever's left over and it's still mutating, they've stopped pushing the vax, right? So the reason to demonize the anti-vax was completely off base, right? I mean, this was, an offensive, it was a horrible thing to do to a group of people. And those of us who are against it or who are, in that group, we know what it's like. And so now they're trying to do it again, for something that, is not related to anything anti-vaxxers did, right? The blame here is obviously on something else, right? COVID, the vax, or whatever else, the medical system, or, God knows what else, right? But this girl losing her legs and having a psychotic breakdown and flatlining isn't because of anti-vaxxers, right? Yeah, they might have hijacked her story. They might be rude, whatever else is going on. They might, say inappropriate things to her. But it's not nearly as bad as the trauma she suffered. And to make it so is just unbelievable. I mean, this is what Huffington Post has been reduced to. Like how bad is that, right? Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.